Hey y'all, WackyWormer here with episode 9 of my HermitPack playthrough. Last episode, you saw where we got some of the foundations for Applied Energistics 2 set up. Now remember, Applied Energistics 2 does not come in HermitPack by default. You're going to have to add it in manually. And I actually did that before I generated my world. If you're doing it after world generation, you may run into some problems. So just kind of be aware of that if you're following along and you want to add this in yourself. Now last episode, we got started with the foundations. We had our Crystal Growth Accelerator here. What that did was allow us to convert our nether quartz, Certus quartz, and fluix crystals into their pure upgraded parts, I guess you would call them. We also have our charger here, which allows us to charge our regular Certus quartz into charged Certus quartz. And then our inscriber, which allowed us to take our logic, silicon, calculation, and engineering presses and apply materials to them and get the basic foundation materials that are used for other Applied Energistics 2 recipes. So that's what was covered all in last episode. In this episode, I'm going to go over the system I have now. It's a very basic system, not too complicated. It's kind of a step up from the most basic system you could have in AE2, and that's because we have integrated the ME controller into this thing already. Without this ME controller here, you can have a maximum of 8 devices from AE2 on your network that use some sort of data. So that's not including just power consuming devices like our energy acceptor over here. We're not counting that. But other things like our storage drive here, terminals, anything that allows you to interact with the data in the system, you can have a maximum of 8 of those if you do not have a controller here. Once you have a controller, you can do a maximum of 8 per side of the controller that you tap into. And you can expand it with more controller blocks to give you a higher maximum number of devices that you can use here. So just be aware of that. So that's the first block I crafted. The second one was this storage drive. In the storage drive, we're going to hold our storage cells. These are, sort of the flash drives or the hard disks that our digital items are going to be stored on. You can see I've already almost maxed these things out. They can hold a maximum of 63 types, and the 4K storage cell can hold 4,000 bytes of data. The interesting thing here to note is that the cells you want to craft is going to depend on what sort of use you want to get out of your system. If you're going to have a few number of items or a few number of types of items, but a lot of those items, then you want to go ahead and craft, the 16K or the 64K storage cells. They're still only going to hold 63 types, but you'll have a much larger number of items you can store on each cell. If you're going to have many different types of items, like I'm kind of planning on having, you're going to have smaller cells, but more of them. So I'm going to have multiple 4Ks, maybe even some 1Ks in my storage drive, because you can see I've already almost maxed both of these out with 126 items. I'm going to need more room for more types of items, not just more of the items I already have. So that's what's going on there. We've got our ME cable run between there, run all the way around. Now remember, the ME cable carries both power and data, so there's a differentiation between them in the mod, but they're both carried on the same cable. So you don't have to worry about running multiple cables to every block you have. So we've got that running across here. It's coming out of our energy acceptor here, which is taking in power from our power production system that we're using Mechanism to produce, and we're pulling the energy out of there. It's running around and it's running into these two devices right here for our ore processing setup. This is an ME export bus. That means that we are exporting items from the ME system into some sort of external storage device or machine or whatever. So don't get them flipped. Export device exports out of the ME system, not out of a particular machine or storage device or whatever. So we're exporting copper, and I think it was 10, into this system so far, just because I haven't found the other ore blocks to filter this by. Note that I have these capacity cards over here. Without any capacity cards, this thing only can filter by 1 block. Your first capacity card increases it to 5 blocks total, and then the second gives you the full 3x3 grid for a total of 9 items that you can filter by. So just kind of be aware of that. Obviously I just cleared it, so I might have to redo that, but that's no big deal. The import bus imports items from an external machine or storage block or whatever into the system. We could also filter here, but I don't care about filtering it. I want to take everything that comes out of this smelting factory and put it into our system. Now, remember last episode I said that these Crystal Growth Accelerators here will consume a decent amount of energy, and at some point we may want to cut the energy to those things. Well, we figured out how to do that, and what we're going to use here is a toggle bus, an ME toggle bus. The trick to placing this guy is you want to place it onto an ME cable in the direction that you're going to be running your next ME cables, and this is going to be the cutoff point where we're cutting off storage and data from traveling through the system. So I'm going to run my cable out over here and then around in this L. So I'm going to drop my toggle bus there, and see it's in line with the direction I want to run. So I'm going to put my ME cable down there and then kind of come around that corner there. And you can see these devices are currently off because this switch is off. If I flip the switch on, they now have their little glowing, periodic glowing animation. You can see the little electrical arcs there. Everything's functioning fine. Cut it off. They're back off, not consuming power anymore. So that's working out pretty well. The last thing I want to go over currently is the crafting terminal. Now there's several types of terminals in Applied Energistics 2. The most basic one is just the access terminal. That's going to allow you to put items into your system, view what items are in the system, and search and do all that, and take items out. The crafting terminal uses a regular terminal as a crafting ingredient, but it also gives you this 3x3 crafting grid here. So if I wanted to convert, say, this stack of copper right here into copper blocks, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to make sure all that copper stays in the system, but I go ahead and fill this crafting grid up here, and then I can click and you see it's pulling the item straight out of the system instead of my inventory. So that's pretty cool, right? You hit this X to clear it, and then I can reverse the thing here and take all of those copper ingots or copper blocks back down to copper ingots. So that's going to be a big help, and just kind of puts all of your items in one spot, lets you craft using all of the items that you possess as long as they're within your ME system. And I've already cleaned out all of these, almost all of these chests and things here. Remember, because I said this thing only stores a certain number of types of items, you're going to want to avoid putting in here the types of items you're only going to have 1 or 2 of, or only going to stack items that don't stack. So like tools and weapons, you don't want to put those in here. Our presses here, we have so few of them, we just kind of want to keep those handy. Generally, if you're crafting machines or storage blocks or things like that, you don't want to put those in there. You want to have building blocks, metals, redstone, glowstone, all that kind of stuff are the things that you want to put into your system, and just have everything else outside of it. I think that covers everything we've gotten done so far in Applied Energistics 2. If you have any comments or feedback on things I've covered in the past and you want me to better cover them in a new episode, things you want me to cover in the future, just let me know. Leave it in the comment section below. Give me a like or a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. Subscribe if you want to see more content, and I will see y'all in the next episode.